In the center of the Old Testament, there are 5 books that are often referred to as the wisdom literature of the Bible. And of course, we understand that to be Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. We're going to look at the book of Ecclesiastes and analyze some of the things that it has to say in regard to wisdom, because it's part of the wisdom literature. It's very appropriate that Solomon is the author of this book, and the authorship is attributed to him, and all our understanding is that he is the author of this book. And not only this book, but 3 of the 5 wisdom literature books are attributed to Solomon being the author, and he is the author of those 3 of those 5 books, because he's the one who prayed when he became king for an understanding heart, and God granted him a degree of wisdom that was greater than any man had ever had. And by wisdom, we mean that God will teach us and instruct us through the writings of this book and the other ones, practical ways to apply his truths to our lives. And as we think about Solomon being the author of this book, you notice verse 1 says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. And as we think about that, notice that he calls himself the preacher. Very rarely do we think about Solomon as a preacher. We think about him as the son of David. We think about him as the king in Jerusalem. But the first way he identifies himself is the preacher. This is an uncommon word in the Hebrew Bible. In fact, it's only used 4 times in the book of Ecclesiastes in the entire Old Testament. And it's a word that means one who convenes or calls an assembly. That's why it's often called preacher. The Greek equivalent of this word, and it was used as the title of the book when there was a Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, is ecclesia, which we recognize as an assembly. One who calls an assembly is the Hebrew term. And so when you put those together, it's one who has called an assembly as a teacher, as a preacher, as a communicator. And that's why it's called, or he calls himself rather, the preacher. And as you think about that, he's trying to teach us something. He's trying to tell us something with the wisdom that he has. And when you put that on a practical level and you begin to look at the book and you begin to think about, what does this book say to us? What is the preacher trying to tell us? What is the Holy Spirit trying to teach us through the preacher? What does the book of Ecclesiastes mean? I guess the theme of the book is, what is the meaning of life? What does life mean? Why am I here? And what is the meaning of my existence? And as you work through the book, and as we study through the book, you see really there's only 2 alternatives. You can do it man's way, or you can do it God's way. Wisdom will teach us what is the best way. Wisdom will help us to see what is God's way. And so let's look at this great book and learn wisdom.